I'll just say that I have followed Amy's creative work, and Earl and I were privileged to both be at the performance at Carnegie Hall and then the performance at the Lincoln Center. But Amy's work and your guidance, Amy, in my opinion, I would assume you see it this way too, is these projects that are cutting edge what our culture needs, and cutting edge, just like that first slide I showed in class tonight, of let the healing begin, because we have problems with the treatment of immigrants. We have issues with the treatment of, the Black Lives Matter, but not just Black lives, Latino lives, Indigenous lives. And
right.
so Amy, where, I don't know, it's crazy to ask you these questions, and there's so much going on in terms of creating projects. So Fannie Lou Hamer's life was the inspiration. Then how did then the rest of the project and the program of women, warriors of change, how did all that come together?
Yeah, and it's people ask me that all the time, and I sometimes throw up my hands, and I can only kind of tell you what I know, because there's a lot that I don't know, I think. But I was just struck by her story, and some days later, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is like the magic hour when I wake up and great ideas come to mind. And I woke up and I just sort of heard the words, "Women warriors, the voices of change." And I said, wow, that's something. Women warriors, the voices of change. And I thought, I like that. Okay, I'm going to just remember that. So I woke up the next day and was thinking about it. And I mean, I just felt like it came right into my head. And I started thinking about Fannie Lou Hamer and her strength and her testimony. And I thought, whose shoulders does she stand upon? And I started looking online and reading articles and researching history. And I started going through hundreds and hundreds of years of women's history. And I went all the way back to the 13th century and discovered women who were building in medieval Europe schools for girls, and women who were speaking out against the slave trade in the 15th century. And I discovered, I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of women, but I let my intuition guide me, and I'd look through these lists of women in the 16th century, and I mean, and I would just sort of let my eyes guide me, and boom, I'd find somebody. And I'd pick her out and I'd say, she's there for a reason. And how does she relate to the one previous? And how does she relate to the one after her? And I put this timeline together of women in the very first part of the show, from the 13th century to 1960. And I would tell Fannie Lou, I took Fannie Lou Hamer's picture and I put her on my desktop. And I would open my computer every morning and say, Fannie Lou Hamer, we've got to do this. I mean, I was like, this is so silly, but I actually promised her. I said, Fannie Lou, I'll never, ever forget your voice. I'll never forget your strength. I don't know what this means, but I've got Women Warriors of Voices of Change, and let's do it. So I started putting together this narrative, and then I started creating different chapters. I mean, I always say, I'm not sure how I did it. Fannie Lou guided me, and I would just trust that she's going to tell me what to do, or show me what to do, or something. And so I created 12 different chapters, and there's women who are taking off their veils in Iran. We had a child who was almost sold into marriage from Afghanistan. We featured climate activists, environmental activists, and it's an extensive program. But I actually ended up creating a documentary film. I mean, who am I? I've never created that before, but it happened. I started putting pictures together, and I started hearing music, and I say the project created itself. I was just guiding it, and I used my intuition when I did it, and I worked 2 years on it. I worked every single day, 7 days a week, sometimes 14 hours a day. And my son was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Don't even ask. I can't even explain it." But I knew that somehow I had to give birth to this. It was very important, and I totally trusted that what I was doing had some type of really big value, human value. And it really was never about me. It was about all these women I had discovered, and it was about amplifying their voices and raising them back into the light. And I felt in servitude to them. I mean, I felt like I really had to do justice to their lives, these women who have been forgotten in history and who have been ignored. And many of the people featured in the documentary, you probably didn't even know, right? You hadn't heard about.
Yeah.
And so I brought these women who sacrificed so much for social justice and for voting rights and for human rights and for women's rights. I brought them to life because I felt them calling. I felt them calling, and I felt Fannie Lou just telling me, go.
Yeah, and I love how candid you're being, Amy, because what you're, in my opinion, Amy, what you're talking about is what we're in the midst of right now in terms of planetary change, soul level change. You know, as you're talking about this and you're guided, Amy, and let me see if I can get this to link up so it doesn't sound so disjointed, but you know, what we're experiencing right now, today and tomorrow, and I hope some of you have and will take in the events surrounding the Biden-Harris inauguration, is the sanity of balance of culture and these souls that have affected our planet that go back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I think, you know, what you're saying, Amy, is these souls have been speaking through you. These souls have been guiding you, you know, whether it's Fannie Lou Hamer or any of these other souls that go back to the 13th century, as well as the immigrant population, is that we, oh my gosh, there's so much I could say about this. We've gotten out of balance, sadly, with this notion of this narrow group of people that have this color of skin, this gender, this attitude, this belief structure. These are the right people. These are the, we should listen only to this group. And we should ignore all these other groups of people, whether they're immigrants or women or people of color or indigenous people. And it's why, everybody, I mean, I feel like I know Amy at a fairly deep level, know you, Amy, at a fairly deep level, but these projects that you allow yourself to channel,
Right.
bring change, and that any of us can bring change. It doesn't require, some of you may be saying, I don't know if any of you are saying this, but like, well, how can I bring change? I mean, Amy's she has a master's degree, she's a composer, she lives in Manhattan, blah blah blah. But we're all capable of bringing this change, each in our own way. And you know, I wanted you to kind of listen and walk the journey of Amy's life, and Amy, how you've brought these projects together